Welcome to the Flame Tree Myth and Fiction podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Myth and Fiction podcast. If you joined us a couple of weeks ago for our episode featuring A Breath of Time, then you'll already have had a glimpse into our brand new romantic fantasy anthology series. And, as promised, today we're turning to its fiery, ferocious, and of course romantic counterpart of Love and Dragons. Now, while dragons might usually conjure images of soaring through the skies and hoarding treasure in mountain caves, today's episode takes a slightly different turn. We're diving beneath the waves. With the days getting a little bit brighter here in the UK and summer just on the horizon, these stories are going to bring you a touch of salt air and sea spray, though perhaps with a little more magic and a few more teeth than your average seaside escape. Today we're featuring two stories that explore love and transformation through the lens of the ocean. At the heart of it all are creatures of legend and the bonds that they make with humans. Our first story is called We Are Not Them, and it's written by Georgina Kamsika, taken from Of Love and Dragons, one of the first two anthologies in our romantic fantasy short stories series. It's an enemies to friends to lovers tale set against a vast oceanic backdrop, where two women must confront the weight of their history. Looming over the story is a dragon unlike the traditional kind, a creature shaped by the sea who carries a very ancient curse. What makes dragons so endlessly fascinating is their adaptability. Across cultures, across time, they are shifting and changing. Sometimes they're monstrous and sometimes they're wise, but no two dragons are ever quite the same. And that leaves space for stories like these. Before we begin, let's hear from Georgina herself as she introduces the story and the inspiration behind her sea-bound dragon.
Hi, I'm Georgina Kamsika, author of We Are Not Them for the Of Love and Dragons anthology. I'm a speculative fiction author who enjoys writing about relationships across divides, emphasising cooperation as a means to resolving conflict. As a South Asian author living in England, I also love to integrate elements from non-Western mythologies into my work. We Are Not Them is the story of a pirate crew sailing on a cursed ocean that is dying out. The lead character, dogged by her brazen rival, wants to heal the ocean before her ship and crew are destroyed, forcing her to uncover her tangled past. I'd had the idea for my lead characters knocking around in the back of my head for a while. Two feral children who grow into playful rivals, but I hadn't really known what I'd wanted to do with them. When I saw the call from Flame Tree for this anthology, the addition of a dragon into their convoluted personal history really made their relationship come together, and I found their story. Once I'd combined those threads, I started to think about the kind of dragon I wanted. The setting is hinted at, but it's not explicitly stated, so I wanted the dragon to feed into the world building. Using my British Indian heritage, I thought about nagas with their long snake-like bodies, but then added in a British twist to the beast so it has four legs as well. I enjoyed envisioning him, and I hope I was able to capture him well. I don't want to talk too much and give everything away, so please enjoy the story and check out the anthology. Thanks for listening.
And now, here's We Are Not Them, read by Sabrina Robinson.
We Are Not Them by Georgina Kamsika. The oceans were dying. The Stormbringer cut through dull waters with no gulls, no dolphins, not even the flicker of flying fish. The only sound Kael heard was the creak of her ship's bones and the slow, sick rhythm of her crew's breathing. They were all coughing now, a dry, rattling sound, like gambler's dice in a tin cup. Even the sails had taken on a brittle yellow hue, the fabric crumbling. Kael noticed the rot a few months ago. First, the seabirds disappeared from the skies. Then the water casts turned salty. Then the fish were gone, vanished as if the ocean had emptied. Then Kael's dreams began. dreams of a dragon, more benevolent than fearsome, with a broad forehead and pearl-like eyes. His four-toed paws, tipped with claws like curved lapis lazuli, held a woman close. She laughed as he braided his whiskers with silver. The lover stood thigh-deep in the black tide, her skin the same deep brown as Kael, her hair also long and dark as oil. The dream woman held out her cupped hands, and in them lay a single pearl, blue as a midsummer sky, cracked down the middle. "Find her," she mouthed, "before the last tide falls." Kael woke each time choking on salt water, her grandmother's dagger in her fist. "It's the dragon's curse," said Old Man Doyen, one of her crew who'd sailed these waters before the red-coated invaders had renamed everything. He spat over the rail. The spittle didn't even make it to the water. It hit the burned air and turned to dust. 100 years back, a tide-bound dragon loved a woman, gave her his heart, pearl and all. But she left him. Now the sea remembers. Kael watched the horizon for other ships. "The ocean is dying because of a dragon." Doyen grinned, gums like spoiled meat. "Nah, Captain. It's dying because of her betrayal. That's why the dragon will help you. Dragons don't help. This one will. You're wearing her face." The night Kael first met her rival, Siyuna, the moon was a thief. It stole the color from the world, left everything bone white and ink black. The docks, the ship, her grandmother's dagger in her fist. Kael slipped through the shadows of Port Vera, looking for her past. She was 14, and the Stormbringer was not yet hers. Still just a moldering merchant's hulk, with sails stained yellow as abandoned wedding dresses. Kael didn't see the silhouette in the crow's nest. A mistake. "That's a terrible plan," said a voice above her. Kael nearly gutted herself. A girl hung upside down from the rigging, her hair a tangle of dark honey, her grin brighter than the lanterns bobbing in the harbor. She dropped lightly beside Kael, her limbs loose and agile. She looked about the same age, and just as undomesticated. "You'll want the aft lock to get to the safe," the girl said, plucking the dagger from Kael's grip. "This one by the galley sticks." Kael glared. "Give that back." "Make me." Falling for the provocation was Kael's next mistake. They fought. Not the pretty, clashing steel kind from fairy tales, but the messy, elbow-throwing, biting if necessary kind favored by feral children everywhere. They rolled through tar and fish guts and coconuts until the deck beneath them gave way. They landed in the hold, sprawled on a mountain of smuggled spices, both still gripping the dagger. Siyuna picked a cinnamon stick from Kael's hair. "So, partners?" Kael headbutted her. The girl laughed as blood dripped from her forehead. Kael would spend years pretending that didn't matter. Siyuna passed her the dagger hilt first. "Next time, aim for the kidneys." Kael spat blood onto the docks. "Next time," she said, "I won't miss." That mission to investigate Kael's past failed, but Siyuna became a permanent fixture in her life. Never as a friend, instead a rival who would appear after the hard work to claim half the rewards. Mostly with charm, occasionally with force. Kael resented it every time. But this mission, to find the dragon, to heal the ocean, had no reward Siyuna could steal. So Kael slipped past the scoundrel and sailed far to the east of the horizon until her ship fell off the edge of known maps. Doyen stared at the listless clouds, the still ocean, and the lifeless sails, carefully navigating them until they arrived above a deep canyon in the seabed. The Stormbringer slumped against a reef of coral, rotten boards warping. "Your dragon is down there. neither dead nor alive, cursed to linger in the depths. How do you know all this? Kael asked as she shed her boots and jacket. Tales of your ancestors are legendary, he said, helping her prepare to dive. You know more about my family than I do, she muttered. The dragon knows the truth. Kael arrived in the dragon's grave with salt in her hair and a knife between her teeth. She'd heard that a shard of Virija's heart could grant a wish if one was brave enough to claim it. The dive should have killed her. Kael swam past the carcasses of ships that had no business being there. Galleons of glass sails, junks with singing figureheads, her own childhood carrack half buried in the silt. But instead of death, the water greeted her like a jilted lover, cold, familiar, unwanted. Kael swam through the wreckage of the seabed, her feet kicking up centuries of silt, when something moved. Kael paused to peer into the shadows. Sayuna, the thorn in her side, the thief of her winds, floated beside her, grinning around her own knife. Her hair, usually sun-bleached honey brown, streamed dark as kelp in the gloom. Kael's pulse did something treacherous. She blamed the depth. Miss me? I do need bait. Kael flipped her dagger, but I thought I'd got out unseen. And yet, Sayuna caught Kael's wrists as the current tugged her to where the sea floor dropped into forever. I'm with you on this one. I've been dreaming about this place. Of my ancestor. No, of mine. Then a shadow moved. Virija emerged from the darkness, his skeleton draped in the tattered silk of forgotten sails, endlessly long, coiled like a river around a mountain. His body moved with the sinuous grace of ocean currents. Little thieves, he murmured, his voice the creak of a ship's grave. You smell of them. You are either very brave or very stupid. Historically? Sayuna spat out her dagger and caught it. Both. You, said Virija, the word a riptide. You dare to come before me. My ship is dying, said Kael. The dragon exhaled. His muzzle was lined with coral-colored feelers, his breath a mist that smelled of rain and salt. Yes, you are doing it. No. He uncoiled, revealing the hollow in his chest where a pearl should glow. Your ancestor is. The oceans have been dying for centuries. The water shivered. For a heartbeat, Kael saw her, the woman from her dreams, her hair now kelp, her fingers now bone, pressing against the dragon's ribs from inside. She mouthed something that Kael did not understand. She cut the bond, murmured Virija. But some hearts won't stay severed. Kael understood. You're drowning each other. The dragon laughed, and the seafloor trembled. Clever girl, lift the curse, and your ship will live, the ocean too. How? I will answer any request you have, he said, if you give me your heart. Kael's fingers found her grandmother's dagger. Metaphorically? Sayuna eyed the dragon's talons. Please say metaphorically. Enough. Virija's voice shook the wreck. You seek my word? Then prove you're worthy. Relive the betrayal that broke me. Survive, and the heart is yours. Fine, Kael said, stepping forward. No, it's my dream. Sayuna pushed her aside. You go together, said the dragon. The water shimmered. Once, when the moon still sang to the tides, there lived a dragon made of seawater and storm. Virija, last of the tide-bound, had been beautiful then. His scales caught the sunlight and fractured it into 1,000 shifting hues. Gold for his pride, blue for his sorrow, silver for the love he'd foolishly given to a mortal woman. She had worn his heart around her throat, a single luminous pearl on a chain of moonlight, and for a century the ocean itself had sighed with their contentment. But mortal hearts are fickle things, and their bond could not last. The woman who had Kael's dark eyes stood with a woman that had Seyuna's face, but not her smirk. The dragon slept nearby, golden and trusting. "I love you, but I can't leave him," Kael's ancestor said. "We're bound." "Cut it," Seyuna's ancestor whispered, "and we can be together." The woman with Kael's eyes hesitated. She touched the pearl at her throat. "Do it if you love me. We need to be free." "Why would they do it?" Kael whispered. Her ancestor turned, eyes full of tears. "Because love is a cage," she said, "and I wanted the sky." Seyuna, who had been unusually quiet, touched Kael's wrist. "I'd pick the cage," she muttered. Kael stared at her. Seyuna flushed. Metaphorically. Not Seyuna pressed a dagger into Vision Kael's hand. She cut the pearl from her throat, the chain dripping blood into the dark ocean. She let it go, not even watching as it sank. The pearl disappeared into the hungry dark, and Varia's fire guttered out. Kael wanted to scream at her past. Seyuna's fingers tightened around hers, her usual mirth replaced with something raw. "We are not them." The vision shattered, the memory fading like squid ink in the tide. One moment, Kael was standing on that ancient shore, watching her ancestor's knife flash in the moonlight. The next, she was back beside the dragon, Seyuna's fingers locked around her wrist, like she thought she might dissolve too. Varia loomed above them, clouded eyes unreadable. The dragon's voice slithered through them. "One of you will leave. One will drown with me. Choose." Kael looked at Seyuna, at the scar through her eyebrow from the time Kael had thrown a compass at her head, at the way her pulse jumped when she smirked, her reckless willingness to follow Kael into the abyss. Kael knew the stories, knew that dragons always meant their bargains. All she had to do was give up Seyuna, and the oceans would be healed. But she also remembered her dreams. "Find her," her ancestor had mouthed. "Before the last tide falls." The ocean held its breath. Beside Kael, Seyuna struggled against the currents, her knife useless, her arrogance stripped away. Kael met the tide-bound dragon's gaze. Fear there, but something else too. Kael reached for Seyuna's hand and pulled. Her rival startled at the contact before floating to her side. Kael held her steady against the angry ocean. The water remembered. It remembered this betrayal, the dousing of the dragon's fire and the slow unraveling of a bond that should have been eternal. Kael floated before him, her lungs burning, her heart pounding like a trapped thing. The dragon's voice was the crush of the abyss. "You are hers, her blood, her betrayal, again." The dragon's laugh, like ships breaking on the rocks. "You think defiance moves me?" "No." Kael held her other hand out to the dragon. "But I think you're lonely." Varia hesitated. The water remembered that too. Seyuna, ever the fool, grinned. "And we're exceptionally annoying." The water trembled, then warmth, light, a great shuddering sigh as centuries of seclusion cracked like old ice. Varia rose, his tarnished scales starting to glow, his eyes clearing. "I refuse to bond again, but I will consider not killing you." He coughed a single glowing pearl into Kael's palm. It melted into her skin. When she breathed, the tides breathed with her. Varia shifted, his skeleton forming scales of lapping waves of iridescent blue, shifting from pale aqua to the fathomless navy of the abyss. Antlers grew from his bare skull, made of blue-black coral threaded with vines of gold. And Kael's ancestor, long trapped within his chest, dissipated into the salty ocean depths. "Then it will be the three of us," Kael said, voice firm and sure. Siuna grinned. "Does this mean we're finally friends?" Kael rolled her eyes. "It means you're my favorite mistake. The sea does not forgive, but sometimes, if someone was very stubborn and very lucky, it forgets." The trip back to the Stormbringer took hours, not because the distance was great, but because the ocean kept showing off. A patch of seaweed twisted itself into the shape of their clasped hands. A jellyfish pulsed with light in time to Varia's heartbeat. Kael's feet left prints that filled with liquid moonlight, and when Siuna stepped in them, the glow climbed her ankles like vines. "Stop that," Kael muttered. Siuna grinned, kicking water at Kael. "Make me." Kael had heard those words before, on a dock, under a thief's moon, with a knife between them. Her heart thumped. They reached the reef to see her once majestic ship, now in ruins. Kael stared at the remains that held her past, and, she once thought, her future. Her crew, led by Doyen, waited on the partially submerged corals. "We've still got my ship," Siuna offered, "though it's probably about dead too." "Scraps of dead trees are hardly worthy of my ocean," Varia said. He reared up, his serpentine body suspended in midair. His wave scales glimmered like mother of pearl, revealing hidden patterns of silver bioluminescence, mimicking the night sky. "What's he doing?" Siuna, never mindful, asked. Kael, heart full from the gravity of this moment, took Siuna's hand and squeezed it. Doyen shuffled forward, feet hanging over the edge of the reef. He nodded to the dragon, then stepped off. The dragon whirled forward, flowed more than flew, his body dissolving into mist as he pulled Doyen deeper into the ocean. Where Varia passed, the air filled with the scent of an early morning breeze. The water around them shimmered, Doyen shifting, changing, growing. It began with his hands, as if his body forgot its own shape. The skin glistened, pearlescent, then blurred into froth, his fingers unraveling into rivulets of foam. His arms followed, collapsing into the surf that surged against the reef. His legs gave way next, then his torso, his heart a pulsating eddy. Doyen's face lingered, smiling lips parting into a soundless whisper before scattering into the wind. Kael moved to stand with her crew, but they barely glanced away from the white-capped breakers. The Doyen Sea gathered itself inside Varia's coils, the foam knitting into something new. The waves sculpted, prow and keel, with mast and rigging spun from sea foam, sails unfurling as if born from Varia's breath. A new ship, made of living squalls and foam, riding the waves with Doyen infusing its very timbers. "Did your crewmate die to make you a ship?" Siuna balked. "Do you think I would let Kael's ancestors roam my seas without a servant to keep an eye on her? He was me. He is still me." Varia's ribbon-like whiskers curled like reeds, glowing faintly at the tips with will-o'-the-wisp light. "This way, we will always be together." Kayal and her crew climbed on board, examining the water-made ship in awe as Maria watched. Sayuna hauled herself onto the deck and collapsed against the rippling mast. Kayal slumped beside her, close enough to shove, far enough to pretend she didn't want to. Above them, the sails drifted in the new, fresh breeze. The air smelled of brine and dragon and the ghost of Doyen's tobacco. "She was afraid," said Sayuna suddenly. Kayal tensed. "Who?" "Your mini-greats-grandma, when she cut the bond." Sayuna pressed against the briny deck. Her hands shook. Kayal remembered the vision, the woman's white-knuckled grip on the knife, the way her eyes had darted to the dragon's sleeping face. Not the look of a traitor, the look of someone choosing between two fires. "Yours didn't stop her," Kayal said. Sayuna's smile was a blade turned inward. "Guess some things skip generations." A wave hit the hull. The ship crested it. Varia swam beside them. Kayal reached over and flicked her ear. "You'd have stopped me." "Damn right," Sayuna caught her hand. "You'd have whined about it, though." Kayal's pulse jumped as Sayuna's thumb brushed her knuckles. Once, twice, before she let go. There was a time Kayal considered Sayuna a rival, but the world had changed, and so had she. Before fear could steal her courage, Kayal reached out and seized Sayuna, crushing their bodies together. Kayal kissed Sayuna. It was nothing like she expected. No fireworks, no choir of angels, just salt and desperation, and the certain sinking realization that she'd trade every ship she'd ever stolen for this. Sayuna, because she was Sayuna, grinned against her lips. Their kiss burned away every unsaid word, every past argument, every fear hidden behind a joke. When Kayal finally pulled back, her chest heaving, Sayuna's eyes went dark. "Took you long enough," she said. "I was worth the wait," Kayal laughed, breathless, victorious. And this time, when Kayal kissed her again, Sayuna was ready.
It's not exactly news, but I have to state that there is just something so undeniably compelling about dragons. Whether they're allies or adversaries, symbols of destruction or transformation, they remain this staple of fantasy, especially romantic fantasy today, where stories so often centre on connection. And here, that shift from enemies to something more between the two women, and from the fearsome creature to companion in the dragon, really captures that trust and love at the heart of the genre. To follow this, we have chosen a tale that drifts a little further into folklore. The Water Kelpie by Sophia Clarke comes from our gothic fantasy anthology Shadows on the Water, published back in 2024. This collection brings together myths and stories featuring rivers, lakes and oceans, where the water holds all sorts of secrets. In this tale, we meet a Kelpie, not quite a dragon, but a creature just as steeped in mystery, who draws a woman down into his underwater kingdom. Clarke, writing in the 19th century under the name Sophie May, was best known for her children's stories, and this one really shows her skill at creating a captivating, otherworldly tale. This is The Water Kelpie, read by B.
The Water Kelpie by Sophia Clarke. Once there lived under the earth a race of fairies called gnomes. They were strange little beings with dull eyes and harsh voices, but they did no harm and lived in peace. They never saw the sun, but they had lamps much brighter than our gaslight, which burned night and day, year after year. They had music, but it was the tinkling of silver bells and golden harps, not half so sweet as the singing of birds and the babbling of brooks. Flowers they had none, but plenty of gems, the stars of earth. There were green trees in the kingdom, but the leaves were hard emeralds, and the fruit apples of gold or cherries of ruby. And these precious gems the gnomes ground to a powder and swallowed with much satisfaction. They heaped up piles of gold and diamonds as high as your head, and never was there a gnome so poor as to build a house of anything a whit coarser than jasper or onyx. You would have believed yourself dreaming if you could have walked through the streets of their cities. They were paved with rosy almandine and snowy alabaster, and the palaces glittered in the gay lamplight like a million stars. These gnomes led, for the most part, rather dull lives. Like their cousins, the water sprites or undines, they were roguish and shrewd, but had no higher views of life than our crickets. Indeed, they hardly cared for anything but frisking about, eating and sleeping. But after all, what can be expected of creatures without souls? One sees now and seen stupid human beings whose eyes have no thoughts in them, and whose souls seem to be sound asleep. Such lumps of dullness might as well have been gnomes, and slip into the earth and have done with it. These underground folk had a great horror of our world. They knew all about it, for one of them had peeped out and taken a bird's-eye view. He went up very bravely, but hurried back with such strange accounts that his friends considered him a little insane. "Listen," said the gnome, whose name was Claude. "The earth has a soft carpet of a new kind of emerald. Overhead is a blue roof made of turquoise. But I am told that there is a crack in it, and sometimes water comes pouring down in torrents. But the worst plague of all is a great glaring eyeball of fire, which mortals call the sun." When Claude told his stories of the earth, he always ended by saying, "Believe me, it is bad luck to have the sun shine on you. It nearly put my eyes out, and I have had the worst headache ever since." Now, there was a young girl named Monetta, who listened very eagerly to the old gnome stories of the earth and thought that she would like to see it for herself. She was also a kind little maiden, as playful as a kitten, and her friends were not willing she should go. But Monetta had somewhere heard that fairies who marry mortals receive the gift of a human soul. So, in spite of all objections, she was resolved to take the journey, for she had in her dark mind some vague aspirations after a higher state of being. Then the gnome family declared that if she once went away, they would never allow her to return, for they highly disapproved of running backward and forward between the two worlds gossiping. "Have you no love of country?" cried they, "that you would willingly cast your lot among silly creatures who look down upon your race?" The old gnome who had travelled took the romantic maiden one side and said, "My dear Monetta, since you will go, I must tell you a secret. For you remember I have seen the world and know all about it. Mortals are a higher race than ourselves, it is true, but that is only because they live atop the earth, while we are under their feet. They make a great parade about their little ticking jewel that they call conscience, but after all, they will any of them sell it for one of our earrings. I assure you that they love money better than our own souls, and I would advise you, as a friend that has seen the world, to load yourself with as much gold as you can carry." So Monetta donned a heavy dress of spun gold, which was woven in such a manner that at every motion she made it let fall a shower of gold dust. She filled the sleeves with sardonyx, almandine, and amethyst, and hid in her bosom diamonds and sapphires enough to purchase a kingdom. Then she went up her steep ladder and knocked on the alabaster ceiling, using the charm which the gnome had given her. Mother Earth, set me free!" At her words there was a sound as of an earthquake, and a little space was made, just large enough for her to crawl through. When she had reached the top, the earth closed again, and she was left seated upon a rock, and the light of the sun was so dazzling that she hid her face in her hands. Thus she sat for a long time, not knowing whither to go, till a young man chanced to come that way, who said, "What do you here?" She raised her face at his words, and could not speak, so great was her surprise at the beauty of the strange youth. He for his part could not help smiling, for she was as yellow as an orange, and an uglier little creature he had never beheld. But he said in a kind voice, "Come with me to my mother's house, and you shall be refreshed with cake and wine." She arose to follow him, and as she walked, a bright shower of gold dust sprinkled the earth at every step. The young man held out his hands eagerly to catch the shining spray, thinking he would like such a rarely gifted damsel for his wife. And in truth he smiled so sweetly, and dropped such winning words, that in time he won her heart, and she became his bride. And when she came into the kirk, she shimmered like the sun. The belt was that about her waist was as with pearls bedone. So great was her love for him that she forgot her lost home under the earth, and every day when she bade her husband good morning, she placed in his hand a precious stone, and he kissed her, calling her dear Monetta, his heart's jewel. But at last the diamonds, sapphires, and rubies were all gone, and she was also losing the power of shedding gold dust. Then her husband frowned on her, and no longer called her his heart's jewel, or his dear Monetta. At length she presented him with a little daughter, as lovely as a water sprite, with hair like threads of gold. Now the father watched the babe with a greedy eye, for its mother had wept precious tears of molten gold before she received the gift of human grief, and he hoped her child would do the same. But when he found it was only a common mortal, he shut his heart against the babe. Monetta was no longer yellow and ugly, but very beautiful, with deep eyes out of which looked a sweet soul. Yet she had lost her fairy gifts, and her husband had ceased to love her. The good woman mourned in secret, and would have wished to die. Only her precious child comforted her heart. One day, as she was sitting by the shore of the lake, a water kelpie saw her weeping, and came to her in the form of a white-haired old man, saying, "Charming lady, why do you weep? Come with me to my kingdom under the waters. My people are always happy." Then she looked where he bade her, and saw afar down under the waters a beautiful city, whose streets were paved with red and white coral. The kelpie said, "Will you go down?" "No," sighed Monetta, thinking of the kind words her husband had sometimes spoken to her. "I cannot go yet." But the kelpie came every day, repeating the question, "Will you go now?" And she answered, "I cannot go yet." But at last her husband said, "How often the thought comes to me, if I had no wife and child, all this gold would be mine." And he knitted his brows with a frown. Then Monetta looked in his face and said, "Dear Ivan, I have loved you truly, but you no longer care for Monetta. I will go away with the little child, and all our gold shall be yours." Then she embraced him with falling tears. His heart was stirred within him, and he would have followed her, only he knew not which way she had gone. Soon the water kelpie came to him in the form of a horse, and ran before him, neighing fiercely and breathing fire from his mouth. This is the way kelpies take to announce the fact that someone has gone under the water. So the man followed the kelpie. His heart was swelling with grief, and all his love for his wife and child had come back to him. He looked into the lake and saw the fair city. In a transparent palace, Monetta was sitting, crowned with pearls, and the child sleeping on her bosom. He shouted, "Come back, oh Monetta!" But she heard him not. He went every day to the same spot, never leaving it until the water was clear, and he had seen his wife and child. He cared no more for his fine castle and his gold, for the castle was empty, and the gold could not speak. "Alas!" cried he, "if only I could listen to the music of Monetta's voice! If only I could hold the child in my arms once more!" Now he cared for nothing but to gaze into the waters at Monetta and her child. One day the water kelpie appeared to him in the form of an old man. Why you sit here, sighing like the north wind? Said the Kelpie. I have loved gold better than my best friends, replied Ivan. And now my best friends are taken away from me, and the gold is left, but I love it no longer. Ah, growled the Kelpie. I have heard of such men as you. Nothing is dear till it is missed. You should have thought of that before. If your lost ones were to return, you would treat them as badly as ever, no doubt. No, no, groaned Ivan. I would love them better than all the wealth in the world. I would love them better than my own life. Ah, the sting it is to think of my own ingratitude. Hold, said the Kelpie. Grumble to yourself if you like, but don't vex my ears with your complaints. Suppose I were to bring back Minetta and the child. Would you give me your chests of gold? That I will, cried the man, right joyfully. Not so fast. Will you give me your castle as well? Ah, yes, castle and gold, take them, and welcome. Not so fast. Minetta and her child are worth more than these. Will you give me the castle and gold, and 10 years of your life? With all my heart. Then, said the Kelpie, go home, and tomorrow you shall see Minetta and her child. When the morrow came, the husband and wife wept for joy at meeting once more, and Ivan said, Can you forgive me, dearest Minetta? Minetta had already forgiven him, and the three, father, mother, and child, loved one another and were content to the end of their lives. And Ivan said, Once and for all, I have found that gold cannot make one happy. But, with the blessing of a clear conscience, warm hearts, and loving words are the sweetest things in life.
At its heart, this story reminds us of something simple but enduring, that love cannot be measured in gold. Mineta's husband learns, later than he should, mind you, that wealth means very little without the people that we hold dear. It's only in actually losing his family that he understands what really matters. So whether it's dragons of the deep or spirits of the water, these stories show us that love, like the sea itself, you could say, can be unpredictable, but transformative and essential. So let us know, do you have a favourite dragon or perhaps a mythical sea creature that you love? We would really love to hear. And of course, we are incredibly excited for the release of our romantic fantasy series, where you'll be able to read many more stories about dragons. The first two anthologies, A Breath of Time and Of Love and Dragons, will be available from April in the UK and May in the US. We also currently have an open call for illustrators for two upcoming titles in the series, The Tarot of Love and Of Blood and Petals. You can find all the details on our website at flametreepublishing.com, as well as on our blog. Be sure to sign up to our newsletter and follow us on social media at Flametree Press to stay up to date. Looking ahead, we've got a very special episode next week all about the Southieverse, where we'll be joined by Eugen Bacon and Cheryl Essentumi to talk about their anthology Southie Terrors, which some of you may have already heard about in our recent episode featuring Eugen's story, The Rawness of You. That episode will also mark the end of Season 2 of the Myth and Fiction podcast. We'll be taking a short break for a couple of months and returning in June with plenty of exciting new content. We are so grateful for all your support and listens. It really means the world to us. Until then, we'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of the Flametree Myth and Fiction podcast and look forward to the next episode. Do recommend it to your friends. Goodbye for now.